Por and para. There isn't a lot of grammar behind por and para, so I'm not going to dedicate a lot of time to talking about it in this video. You have resources available to you on your Canvas site or your course site for this class. I put up their PDFs, PowerPoints, and stuff like that. So the por and para that I'm going to show you, I'm going to share the screen with you. And essentially, it's just going to be walking you through some of the resources that you should look at. In addition to some of the things that you should look at and just giving a brief explanation of some por and para type stuff, just very basically, make sure to look in chapter 11. The resources, there is a PowerPoint there that will give you some extra practice with por and para. So you can look at that PowerPoint, and it's generally just kind of a, hey, see if you know what goes in the blank kind of thing. So I have that up there for you, and then I'm going to show you another couple of documents that I have up there for you while I'm giving you a brief explanation of por and para. Please remember that por and para were both seen first in this curriculum in chapter 2, and no matter what curriculum you have or where you might have seen por and para first, you have seen it before. So they generally, when they first teach you por and para, they generally try to not convince you, they try to tell you, just to simplify things, that por and para both mean for. That is true. Por and para can mean for, but you guys will see that por and para have many other uses other than just for. So hold on just one second. I'm going to do share screen and show you a couple things. I'll do this one first, just because it is something that I already have for you available. So you can see that this is a PDF that I have available for you. You can look under chapter 11 or elsewhere on your course site for Spanish to 11. And this is actually from a really long time ago, but you guys will be well enough to know that I don't generally give you loads and loads and loads of extra homework apart from your online homework that's due every class period. But this, whenever we used a book from like 2 books ago, I used to give this out all the time because, hold on, let me make that go away. Because this is the instructor edition of this scan of this page, por and para. So you can see up here, this is not our current textbook that we're using, but they give you different ways in which por and para are used. So they say para is used for a purpose or a goal. Para is used for a deadline. Para is used for a recipient. Para is used for employment. Para is also used for a destination, and we'll see a couple of examples of that in a few minutes. Then they go over here and they show you por, and they say por can be used for cause, reason, or motive, duration of time, exchange or price, movement in and around a given place. And that's all nice and great. If you want to memorize, para is used for purpose, goal, recipient, destination, deadline, appointment. Por is used for cause, reason, motive, duration of time, exchange, price, movement in and around a given place. That's fine if that works for you. But a lot of times the best way to practice por and para is simply just seeing it in context. So the reason for which I really like this way to practice por and para, once you think you know how to use it and you want to practice, you're at the point of practicing. Once you get to that point, most of the time whenever you have a practice assignment for por and para, what it's going to do is it's going to give you blanks, and it's going to say, okay, you have a 50-50 shot, fill in the blank with either por or para, but you never quite understand the reason why. So they have por and para already in the sentences for you. If you can see, they're giving you number 1, they're telling you that the answer is para. Number 2, they're telling you that the answer is por. This is the single most bestest, most amazingest way I've ever seen por and para as a practice activity in any text I have ever used or ever seen ever in like 15 years of teaching. Why? Because since this is the instructor edition that I have uploaded for you on your course's site, I've given you all the answers. So for example, just look right here. It says number 1, the answer is E. E doesn't mean anything to us right now, but if we go up here, here's number 1. We'll look at it in just a second, but let's see what E is. So we look up here and we say, okay, where's E, where's E, where's E? Okay, so the answer number 1 must be para, and the reason for which it's para is because it has to deal with employment. So we go back down and we say, okay, Carmen trabaja para this certain company, right? Supposedly AT&P or ATIP. Carmen works for this certain company. We already have the para filled in there, and we know that the reason for which para is the correct, let's call it, if it were a fill in the blank, the correct blank between por and para, why para is correct on that one, was for the reason of employment. And we can see employment up here under para. So yes, in that example, para does mean for. Carmen works for AT&P, but not just for trying to fitty guess between por and para, but we know that the reason why is because that is her place of employment. Then the example here says, probably she did or she made, hizo un pequeño viaje de negocios. Un pequeño viaje de negocios is she did a small business trip a San Jose, to San Jose, y después tomó unas pequeñas vacaciones. And after that, she took some small vacations. Y viajó, here's the preterite tense, and she traveled. And then we have number 2, por Costa Rica. So we know that this is, again, not a fitty chance. It's por that will have to be used here, and it's for reason number, and it's number 2. So we want to find the reason. So we go down here, it says, oh, she took a business trip, and then she took some vacation por Costa Rica. And number 2, we can look down here and see that the answer is I. So we'll go up here and we'll look and see that it's over here under por, it's movement in and around a place. So it says that she took a vacation around, remember it said in and around a certain place, so she took a vacation around Costa Rica. Then we'll just do one more because you guys kind of get the gist of it, I bet. So it says estuvo, this is estar in the preterite, she was there for 1 week. Estuvo ahí por una semana. Estuvo ahí por una semana. She was there for 1 week in Costa Rica. Again, no fitty shot. They're telling us that on number 3, we would fill in the blank with por. And so we go down here, find the answer. Number 3, the answer is G. We go back up to the top and we see that G says duration of time. So we filled in that blank with por because of G, which is duration of time. So that is also going to be por being used, meaning for, but what is the reason? It is because she was there for una semana, 1 week, for the duration of time of 1 week. So you get the gist of how this goes, and you can look through and you already have all the right answers here for you, either por or para. Then you can go down below where we have been going to see what the right answer is, and then go up above here and see what it might be. So this is something, remember, that I said from a different text that we used to use, but I'm going to show you something that is from your text. So let me stop sharing that document. And I don't know, actually, let me open up this one. I'm going to do another screen share. And this is from your course materials. So this comes from Unidos, and whether or not we would be using Unidos as our course material along with my Spanish lab, I would probably show this PowerPoint because honestly, I think it's pretty darn good. And it's not exactly from the publisher. I did some changes to it to hopefully make it a little bit better and user-friendly for everybody. So we see here the uses of por and para to express goals, purposes, and means. That's not really important to remember that whole goals, purposes, and means things. I would think about some of the other things. So I'm not going to do the complete slideshow. I'm just going to click like this for you guys. It gives you an overview. It says, hey, it's usually seen in chapter 3 or in some texts in chapter 2, but absolutely no matter what resources or what text course materials you're using, this is going to be shown for the very first time. Por and para will be shown right off the bat, really in one of the very first chapters. So this right here is not the most important thing to know on this slide, but it is important to look at some of the next ones. So they say, hey, just generally speaking, por and para can be used for movement, time, purpose, means. You say means of what? You'll see that in just a little bit. Again, you have this resource available to you, and you have that last thing that I showed you available to you on your course's site. So it says uses of por and para. So they're trying to explain to us how it's used for movement. Por, it says, if you look, how is por used for movement? Through or by a place. We kind of saw that in the Costa Rica example in the last resource that I just showed you. So, viajé por Guatemala. I traveled through Guatemala. Now, notice that we have kind of been convinced that por and para both mean for up until this point, but now we're seeing that if somebody comes up to you and says, viajé por Guatemala, it could be, I traveled through Guatemala, or I traveled around Guatemala, like we saw in the last resource, or I traveled kind of in and around Guatemala. And how is por or para used for movement when we're talking about para? When you're going towards a destination. So this example here says, salí para la escuela. I left for school. So maybe somebody says to you, hey, can you do something really fast for me at house? And you say, oh, no. Hey, I already left for school. Notice the important thing with this is it doesn't just say I left for school, but most curriculum or text will tell you that para, when it's talking about movement, it's whenever you're heading towards some place or whenever you're on the way to some place. Please note that. So yes, this usage of para for movement is like saying I left for school, but the most important thing that you should know is that this para can not only mean for when we're talking about movement, but it can also mean, hey, I'm heading towards school, or I'm on my way to school, or even some curriculum will tell you I am en route to or en route to school. So that would be about movement. What about time? So the uses of por and para with time, we'll look over at por first. A duration of an event, or just think a duration of time. That would be the better way to think about it. Estudié, it's the preterite. I studied. Estudié por 2 horas. I studied for 2 hours. So notice that this is once again por, meaning for, but why do we use it in this sentence? Because you studied for a duration of 2 hours. Don't think about it so much like a duration of an event, like the concert, I don't know, lasted 2 hours or something like that. Just think about it in terms of duration of time. When we think about para in terms of time, we use it for deadlines. So when something has to be done by a certain time, or if there's a deadline of a certain time. So like the graduation deadline, if we wanted to put that in a sentence, you would say something like, oh, I have to turn in the application for graduation by, or the deadline is a certain day, and we would have to use para. Remember, for deadlines, it says, tengo que terminarlo para mañana. I have to finish it by tomorrow. So this is para, not meaning for, but rather meaning by. So a deadline. Then we see this for purpose. This one is not extremely, I mean, it's common, but it's not one of the more important ones. It says reason or motive. That can be confusing for some students. So we'll just look at the example sentence here for por. It says, fui a la farmacia por la medicina. They're telling you that the reason or the motive that you went to the pharmacy was for medicine. So I went to the pharmacy for medicine. Once again, for meaning for, but what is the reason for the use of por in that sentence? Because the reason for which, or your motive of having gone to the pharmacy, was for medicine. In terms of purpose with para, we think about this as recipient. So even though it doesn't use the word recipient, they're saying for whom something is intended, meaning who is going to be the recipient of something. It says, la medicina es para mi abuela. La medicina es para mi abuela. The medicine is for my grandmother. So again, we have for, so we have para, meaning for. Again, we've seen a couple of examples where it doesn't mean for, it meant by or through, or it can mean along. But we have para, meaning for, and what is the reason for that? You can look at this extended explanation right here for whom something is intended, or you can just think about it as the recipient. You see me at the store, I've got a bracelet or whatever, you say, oh, Steph, hey, look, the bracelet. And I say, yeah, that bracelet is for my friend. I would say, that blah, blah, blah that I've got in my cart is para mi amiga, because she's going to be the recipient. It's for my friend, para mi amiga. Then we see this thing where it says means. So uses of por and para with means. Por, all you have to remember is means or mode of transportation. Notice that they're not giving you an example of para with means, because there is not one kind of sort of necessarily that can be delineated like this. So por, means or mode of transportation, literally can be any kind of means or mode of transportation. It can be por tren, by train. So think about this as by car, by train, by plane. So in this sentence, me gusta viajar por tren. I like to travel by train. If you wanted to say, I like to travel by airplane, meaning the airplane is your means or modes of transportation, you would say, me gusta viajar por avión. If I like to travel by car, that is my preferred means or mode of transportation, then I could say, me gusta viajar por coche, por carro, por automóvil, por vehículo. One of the various different ways to say car, automobile, or vehicle in Spanish. Then they talk about other uses of por, and they say one of them is exchange or substitution. People usually think about that as a price that's coming next after the word por, or before, or around it someplace. So let's look at the English translation first. It says, I paid $20 for the food. Pagué, there's preterite, pagué $20 por la comida. Yo pagué $20 por la comida. I paid $20 for the food. So we see por meaning for, but what's the reason for that? because you gave $20 in exchange for the food. Then think about this as per, P-E-R. It says unit or rate, but it says, I always give the waiter a 20% tip. So, siempre le doy 20% de propina al mesero. I always give the waiter 20% de propina, is like of tip, al mesero, to the waiter. Siempre le doy 20% de propina al mesero. Most of the time, we in Spanish ever say per, it's going to be por. So like if I wanted to say miles per hour, it would be millas por hora. So miles per hour, millas being miles, hour being hora, and millas por hora, miles per hour. That's why I said to think about this unit or rate. And if you think about it, even rate of speed, you're going 50 miles per hour. That's why I told you to think about it meaning more like per in English. And then this one, like an object of an errand, it's kind of like the means or motive, like why did you go to the pharmacy? Oh, I went to the pharmacy for medicine in that prior example. Fui al restaurante por sopa. Fui al restaurante por sopa. I went to the restaurant for soup. Okay, it was an object of an errand, but it could also be categorized, and other texts do this. It could be categorized in the same category as the reason or motive, like I went to the pharmacy for medicine. Let me see if I want to go over any of the, we can look at a couple of these, I think. This one is actually extremely uncommon. So this one will be the last one and probably the most important thing to remember for para. So this one is technically, we think about it like in order to in English. So this one right here, estudiamos para aprender. We study to learn. Think about it like we study in order to learn. Estudiamos para aprender. The thing to note about this one is whenever you have para in front of a verb and its infinitive, it's going to take on the meaning as in order to. We study to learn, or we could translate in English as we study in order to learn. It says over here that it's the intention or purpose of something, but that they do want you to know that it's always when it's followed by an infinitive, which is what we see right here. Para, and followed by an infinitive. So you say, for example, why do we come to class? Para recibir puntos de participación, in order to receive participation points. Para recibir, in order to receive puntos de participación, participation points. So why do you come to class? In order to receive participation points. And why do you study? Para aprender, in order to learn. So there's a little bit more to this document that you can look at on your own time if you want to. But for right now, so that was basically just a run through of the stuff that I have available to you for you to look at on our courses site. And I just wanted to go through some of it with you so you could get a little bit more explanation about por and para. But the big thing to remember about por and para is that there is no grammar to it. It's just largely vocabulary. So if I were going to approach por and para as a student, I would honestly just memorize what are all the different uses for por, what are all the different uses for para, and then maybe try looking at that document that I had for you where we had the instructor's version with the answers where por and para were already there, and you could practice with that. And if you have any questions, I'm always available to help you. Thank you.